Is happening here.
There you go. We're recording.
Yep. Jackie,
you are live.
Well, there we are. Welcome everybody to our Success Mastermind. Jackie just cracks me up every day. So good to see you, Jackie.
Sorry.
Yeah, and all of our friends here. We got so many friends. In fact, we've got a co-host who's going to be taking over for me here in just a couple minutes. But before I get to that, I want to acknowledge what happened over the last 12 hours or so. We had our e-commerce work group, which if you missed that was hosted by Stuart, and he covered, I don't know, Stuart, it was 5 or 6 different subtopics. There was a lot that came up in that conversation yesterday, which, by the way, that is, if you go onto our Facebook group, you'll find that you can put requests and questions and feedback for specific work groups like that, right? So, hey, I'm interested in, I don't know, Shopify, for example. Okay, great. Let's talk more about that next week. So that's all in the Facebook group. You can, as a full member, you've got the ability to participate in what we actually talk about. Then, of course, at 9 p.m. Eastern last night, we wrapped up with our book study, As a Man Thinketh, James Allen. Our next book, which we just started as of the end of last night, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. So if you go into the members site, you look on the menu. So we got live sessions on the menu, the book study. There's a link in there that you can go order the Kindle version on Amazon. That may not work in England. I don't know, US versus English, Amazon. I don't know how that works. But anyway, we're on the original text as written and published right at the end of 1936, beginning in 1937. So that's the one we're going to read, and starting with chapter 1 next week. So read that chapter on Thoughts Are Things. What else? We also had this morning, we had Nicola doing our group meditation, which was very nice. I was not able to participate personally, but Nicola, thank you for taking that and volunteering your time to do that as well. I hear people got nice and calm, which is good considering all the stuff that's going on in the world. We can use a bit of calming and hitting the reset button, so to speak. Of course, right now we're on general session, and then tonight we have Stuart Wilde again, who's going to titillate us with adventures in mindset, tales from the trail, with our favorite Llama tour guide. So tune in tonight. Again, that is 8 p.m. Eastern U.S. time.
Can I drop the name? Can I drop the name of tonight's story?
Oh, please.
Secret Journalists and Colostomy Bags.
Thank you. Okay. Can you
wow.
put that in Skype so I know what to talk, because it reminds me of that. Secret
Was that for the llamas, Stuart, or were the bags for the llamas?
You got to tune in to find out, my brother.
Stuart, that is deep, bro.
So yeah, if just in case your curiosity is piqued, tune in tonight at 8 o'clock, and we'll find out all about secret colostomy bags and journalism around such things. All right, so it looks like we got 3 people logged in as a host right now, and one of them is the actual host, which is Jaime Young. Now, I know Jaime, a lot of you have gotten to meet Jaime just as a participant here. He has also put his hand in the air as someone who has a message to bring, which I think will be instructive and uplifting and entertaining, and it better be all 3 of those damn things, damn it, or otherwise we're going to have trouble.
No pressure.
Jaime Young.
This will be the first of last, the first of many not to happen.
All yours, man.
I thanks, Stuart, for that lead, and I got to beat that the topic of colostomy bags. I'm not sure how to go from there. What I'd like to talk about is the topic of to go or not. That is the question, and that is a broad spectrum of things. I think that starts with when we were infants, and when we watched children and we watched kids, stand up and begin to walk. How you could see in their eyes their trepidation, but as they gained momentum and experience, they got more confidence. To go and not to go, it's a question for all of us that'll span our lives, whether it's, like I said, it spans everything. I mean, The reality is what drives those questions, and I think they can be a collection of things. To start with, outside influences, our parents, children, relatives. When I say relatives, I'm struck by that commercial that's out by Geico with the people who talk about how they're in a new house, and they love their new house, but they have aunts, and aunts is spelled A-U-N-T-S.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you have seen that one. Expired. It's a nice house. I hope you can keep it clean. You know, it's just the, you know, to hear that from other people, that siblings, friends, spouses, the pressure of maintaining a cohesive unit, co-workers, the competition that thrives within co-workers, bosses, unreasonable bosses that aren't leaders. They're the inside influences. The things that we don't know, inexperience, the lack of experience, past failures, and all of those ratchet. If you go from where I just started to go the very top, the insecurities that those drive, and that have been created by most likely all of those. I think I spoke to this. I mentioned parents earlier, and I spoke to this, I think, last week, and I don't know, for those who weren't on there, I'm just going to go through this again. I think that many of these influences come in many forms, opinions and judgments. When I was growing up, and I'll try to keep this short, my father and I never heard from my father unless I did something wrong, and I was corrected, and I was, it wasn't mean, it wasn't abusive. It is what it was, and it remained indelibly imprinted in my head, because from that point, I just kept trying to do things that would please him, to get a reaction from him, but not for me. And the point of all that is that we should make, when we're thinking about doing things, when we're thinking about to go or not to go, it should be for us. It should be totally for our fulfillment and our means. It's translated to my adult life, where I still feel sometimes as if I'm making decisions and doing things to please others. And again, that's not what we want to do. It should be first and foremost for ourselves. And beyond those outside influences, we also have to understand expectations, our own and others. But those expectations can be managed. They're managed from what we know and what we don't know. I recently read a quote, and I'm going to have to look up and read this. The known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. I don't know if anybody of you ever heard that before. They're explained as the following, and often used in project management and strategic planning. Known unknowns refers to risks you are aware of, and a great example would be a canceled flight. Unknown unknowns are risks that come from the situations that are so unexpected that they would not be considered, which may have been the case for John and his moving crew. It really connects to what he talked about as far as the correct estimation of effort, which I connected that to having your expectations managed. A lot of times when we're involved with people and we're involved in projects and businesses, our expectations are quite a bit higher than they should be. And then so we tend to, as part of that, we fall short. And I don't think, we don't fall short because we're not good at what we're doing. We fall short because we are so engrossed in what we want to do that the expectations are too high to meet. We'll get there. But in the meantime, we get all those outside influences, the expectations, all those start to build up inside of us. And so we tend to feel like we fail. But who cares if we fail, right? I used to be ashamed of failing. I mean, I think that was ingrained, again, go back to my childhood and with my dad. I always felt like I was failing because I didn't hear about the good stuff that I was doing. I knew I was doing the right things. I just had gotten into that ridiculous cycle of trying to please somebody else, which just really, it's not a good spot to be in. But who cares if you fail? Because if we're going to fail, we're going to learn. And if we're not learning, then I don't believe, then I think we're standing still. And those failures, I mean, if we were perfect, I don't think we'd be as rounded and as great a human beings as we all are on here. And outside, other outside influences in our lives that are positive. There was another quote. I've got to find it. Surround yourself with positive people who are going to push you towards greatness. And that connects again to what John said, make a spectacle of yourself. How can you get outside of those? How can you avoid the outside influences or inside influences? I think you can do that a ton of different ways. One is through a group like here, with people as supporting and loving as we all are here today. I don't think there's not a mean streak in anybody's bones in any of these people here. And I am humbled and honored to be into this group because it's brought out more in me and opened my eyes and taken off the blinders to many, many more things. And at this point in my life, sometimes, you get to be this age, and not that I'm, so super old, but you wonder can you affect change, or can you change yourself? But I think you can. I think you can when you're involved with things like this. I know that when I was competing, well, I guess that might be the word, competing for my dad's attention, what I found was that I left more on the table as far as what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, and the decisions that I made, and some decisions that I didn't make because I didn't think that was going to pass his acceptance. And I can look back on that, but as somebody said to me one time, you use way too many more muscles looking back than you do looking forward. And I think that's the way we have to look at how we go forward. Is that Amazon? I said this before. Is it Amazon? Is it through this group? Is it through mentoring? Is it through loving and meeting the expectations of your children? I mean, one of the things today, one of the outside influences today is in this COVID world is there's some of us on here that have some kids that are homeschooling. I mean, that's a distraction in and of itself. How do we handle that? Do we have to go to an office? Are we fortunate enough to work at home? But if we're working at home, how do we split our time between what we need to focus on, or want to focus on, or believe to focus on, and also the importance of raising your children? I have a 15-year-old. She's going to be a sophomore. She splits time between her mom's house and my house. It's 50-50. I have to manage that. And that's an expectation to manage. The failure part of all this is I started to say that if we're perfect, I don't think we can be as well-rounded as we have the potential to be. And so I'm going to leave you with this quote from an unknown source that I picked up yesterday. Some of you might have read it. It was out there on the net. I am in competition with no one. I have no desire to play the game of being better than anyone. I'm simply trying to better the person. I'm simply trying to be better than the person I was yesterday. And so as we go forward in this group with our endeavors, I think I've actually printed that already, and it's smack here on my wall. And it's something that I want to aspire to and leave that with you guys today. And I'm honored and humbled to be able to present to you guys, to be here and talk with you guys. And with that, I'd love to open it up on the floor for anybody that would like to start. It looks like Lieutenant Colonel Mark is up.
Well, I'm not going to waste any time here, Jamie. Thanks for coming out and doing this and taking the lead. Great. You're a natural, man. It just flows. That's great to listen to you. I guess where I want to go with this is there's a saying in naval aviation that says, know when to go. And essentially it's, and there are two kind of sides to aviation: those guys who get to punch out, and those people who have to write it down because they don't have an ejection seat. But both are pretty, both are potentially dangerous environments. one, the aircraft can kind of get out of hand, and you can be in a situation, and you have a split second to make a decision whether or not your actions are going to let you live, or maybe live and get hurt, or maybe not make it at all. But there's another side of that too, and for those of us, earth dwellers who, are private aviation guys, it's also knowing when not to go. We have this little saying, and I've said it a few times here in this, in this forum, but it's always better to be on the ground wishing, or it's always better to be on the ground wishing you in the air than to be in the air wishing you on the ground. So we talk about managing expectation, and managing, what you're going to do. The whole idea of planning and preparation, and understanding. It's not that it's going to be perfect, because also understanding that, plan's only good to the point of execution. After that, things are always evolving. But if you're not doing that and you're not prepared, there are decisions along the way. You have to say, is this something I really want to do? Or do I get home-itis? Do I put myself in a situation potentially that, I might not be able to recover from? And it doesn't necessarily just mean aviation. It could be anything, even in business. You could have catastrophic failures in your life. It could be financial, or otherwise. But I just think this whole aspect and where you're going with this, whole idea of just managing expectation and knowing, how far you can take something, and then having some kind of doing a reality check, having some pragmatic approach to what you're doing. So, and then making adjustments on the fly as necessary, but still looking at, how would these decisions affect my, my situation positively or negatively, and or others. And this whole idea of failure, if it's all going to be predicated on the aspect of failing, instead of looking at the potential for opportunities, there's a fine line to walk there too. I mean, you could have failure and it could be catastrophic, and if you have an idea that that's a possibility, maybe that's the direction you don't want to go down. But if everything you put in front of you all the time is failure, and you're not looking at what the potential opportunity is on the other side, and managing that risk and getting through that potential failure to those opportunities, how are you ever going to excel? And that's I think that's the whole premise of what you just mentioned too, is playing people better than yourself, surrounding yourself with people who are better than you, because that's going to raise your game. You're just naturally going to be that way. Either you're going to fall on your face, maybe you do, and you get back up and you keep working it, but you're going to get there if you keep pressing and you keep working with people that. And I think this forum is a perfect forum. The background that people have here in this forum is amazing. We should be reaching out to each of us and utilizing and capitalizing on all those capabilities that sit here right in this forum right now. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Well said. I'd like to also just go back to this to go or not to go. To go is hard. It's you put yourself out there. You're outside of the box. You're out of your comfort zone. You're vulnerable, but you have to go. Ultimately, you have to go because that expands creates relationships. It opens up doors. It expands your life. It gives us courage. So to not go is what you just said. I think it leaves doubt. What if? And I've spent enough time going what if at this point in my life, and I'm done. I'm done with what if. I'm gonna step out there. I'm gonna step off that curb. I'm gonna look both ways and hope I didn't miss a car that's coming or a train coming. That light in the tunnel is, hopefully if it's not a locomotive, and if it is, I know how to deal with. Well said, Mark. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jamie.
Olivier next, Jackie and Wayne. Go ahead, Jackie. Olivier, sorry.
Hi, Jamie. Hi, everyone. Really good, really good stuff. Thank you so much. A few things jumped in my mind as you were talking, and I think that whole thing about pleasing parents, at some point, we've just got to bite the bullet and have, an honest conversation with them, once we get to the point where we find our voice and we find our inner strength. And we just got to say to them, I can't redo your life and, make up for whatever regrets you may have. I obviously respect and I hear what you're saying, but, I'm going to try and make decisions that are good for me. That's a conversation I probably had with my parents that didn't go down well, but it was one I thought I had to have. And I know it's difficult, when we have, very strong personalities for parents, how to go up against them and have those difficult conversations. And in fact, once I confronted my parents, my dad in particular didn't know how to come back and just literally left the room and never gave me any feedback, never responded until tomorrow. We've never finished that conversation. So that's where it is, and I've just said, you know what, you're still my dad. I can't change that, but at least I said what I wanted to say at the time. And then two other things that struck me. You said this is a group where there isn't a bad bone in anyone's body. I will caveat that with say, if anybody from the outside tries to get with anybody in here and say anything negative about anybody in here, then you might see a few bad bones show up, because we will gather like troops around, that person and say, hang on a sec, this is part of my family, back off. So I think there is a resilience within us, and I think we're here for each other, and we won't take anybody talking anybody in this family down. So that's probably when you'll see the other side of us, so to speak. And then as you were talking, some of the words from Kenny Rogers' song, The Gambler, came to mind. You got to know when to walk away and know when to run. So, it's all well to say, do you go or don't you go? But at some point, you got to decide, even when you've gone, do you walk away because, maybe the cost is too high, or you can see that it's not going to work out. So like we might have products on Amazon, and at some point you might have to draw the line to say, look, this isn't doing what it's meant to do. And so I'm going to cut my losses here, and I'm just going to flog them for whatever, get rid of them and move on to the next selection, right? And then sometimes you probably just have to run where, you don't even try and sell them for rock bottom prices. You probably just give them as, a free gift as part of another bundle or another product or whatever, and just say, okay, you know what? I've learned from that. That didn't do well. I've made the loss. Hopefully it wasn't that many units, and that's it. You move on. So, even when we go, we will still have to make that decision. Do we run away? Do we walk? That kind of thing. So that's what resonated with me as you were speaking.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And back to, dealing with your father, and I've dealt with my father, and not really had the conversation. I've never had the conversation to tell him that that's how I felt, which is probably not, it's probably a conversation I should have. However, I will say in the most recent years, he has, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's his outside influences or his inside influences have changed the way he reacts to me. And I get thank yous now. By the way, I don't do the things, it's unconditional. I don't expect it. But when you get into that routine and you're in that wheel, and all you're doing is getting banged up because you made an error, then you flip it over on its head, and then you're looking for it. Now it becomes conditional, and that's where you want to be. So now it seems as if it's coming back. I still do the things I always did. So it doesn't keep me from doing it. Anyway, great stuff. Jackie, then Wayne, and then Stuart, Mr. Colostomy Bags Wild will be third. So go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you. You and I must be related, because my dad sounds exactly like your dad. Exactly. He just never really had anything to say to me. It was always my brother who was behind me. I guess the number one son, as he always called him. He'd come in every day, go, "Where's number one son?" I'm sitting there, never says hi, never looks at me, nothing. And he did that for years. About 30 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And, that was hard to hear it, and to actually, to see, I knew it, but to hear it every day. And then my little sister, and my dad hated people crying. And my little sister came along, and he would take her and do all kinds with her and give her had a nickname, and everything was all about her. And I'm like, okay, here I am, but I'll go my way, you go yours. And it took 30 years to get over the resentment.
Yeah, that's tough.
It is. It's really tough. Yeah. It's really tough when you see it every day, and not just one time a day, but many times a day. And I'd say something to my mom, and she would just go, that's your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that don't help, you know.
Yeah, that's
So-
difficult. And I think it's a generational thing, to be honest with you. I think it gets better with each generation moving forward because we learn, again, mistakes, failures. We learn, we move forward, and we're not our parents. Our kids aren't going to be us. Their
Nope.
kids aren't going to be them. So you hope that everybody gets a lesson on the way and each step up the run to your life heading towards the sunset, and we get better at it. So we don't, we realize those imperfections in our parents, and I try to strive to be better in that area and others. So yeah, good stuff, Jackie. Good stuff.
Yeah, it was just really hard. If he had just even said one time, where's your number one daughter? I would have been ecstatic the rest of my life. The only time he told me he loved me was when he was in the hospital, probably 2 or 3 weeks before he died. And I was leaving, and I said, "Bye, Dad, I love you." And he said it, and I didn't hear it until my roommate told me that he said it. And I never heard it before, and I wish I had really heard him say it. But I guess I didn't expect it, so I didn't hear it.
Well, we love you. We all love you.
Oh, I know that, but the one time he did do something was when I had gone to the convent. I came home, I was looking for a job. I couldn't get a job. He took me down to where I used to work. I got a job, and then he talked to me, but that was 35 years later. And so, you're right. You have to know when to go. You have to learn by your failures. You have to learn, I can do this. Yeah, I failed. When I failed, I got told I failed. But, I picked myself up, and I don't think I did too badly. I think I'm okay now. I believe I'm a good person.
You are.
I try to do things for other people, not, because I want to, not because to say, hey, I'm good, but I like helping people, and I can't do it now like I used to. I wish I could. But, I learned from a lot of mistakes, and I learned you got to be your person, you got to make your decision, and I decided I was going to do this, and I've tried it, and I'm staying with it. So I just wanted you to know that I know exactly what you were talking about. And my dad died like 20 years ago, but it still hurts sometimes when I think of it.
Yeah. Well, you keep coming. You keep showing up here. You'll never get tired of the love we'll offer you here. So you just keep showing up, and we'll take care of you.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much. Not Wayne.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Wayne, you're up.
Thank you, Jamie. Wow, very, very great what you shared with us this morning, and great help for me. And you're talking about influences and opinions, and yeah, that really rings true. And so many things that I've shared in the past, even here, of things that I've done and have done in my life as far as my career and so on, were based on opinions, and I didn't pursue things that I loved because of the opinions of the people that were surrounding me. So I really appreciate that. And, just understanding expectations. You talked about both our own and others, and coming to differentiate the meaning of what those expectations are and how they actually influence us and how we act and react to them. And, the opportunity that we have to reset expectation, or to be clear in reverse on the expectation that somebody has for us. And you mentioned canceled flights there, the known unknowns. And I thought, well, how dare Jamie say that we cancel flights in the airline business? Nobody cancels flights, but I have to admit that we do, because I actually used to manage the team that was their job, is to decide which flights were going to operate and which ones weren't. And we always operate on the premise of complete the mission. And, a lot of what Mark said is, just so true. And I just love hearing him talk about aviation too, and the aspects of it. But a lot of times we go, but we know that we may not go to where we intend to go. We still go. So, people have heard of diversions and stuff. So one of the guys that used to work for me always used to say, it's okay to have a hopefully plan as long as you have a good plan B, plan C, and plan D. And so you launch, you go, and a lot of the times you actually get to your destination. Weather changes as time goes on, or the conditions that may have held you back actually open up, or you have what's known as a suitable alternate or a safe alternate, and you go there. So, and you've still achieved. And usually the alternate's just a stopping place. It's actually you do end up completing the mission. It might be a little later or a little bit different than intended, but you still complete the mission. And thinking of learning from failures, it's not just because I love aviation so much. And I used to have a dream of being an astronaut when I was growing up in the moon era. And, what comes to me about that is the early test pilots, the guys that broke the sound barrier, the people who went to the moon, were willing to risk their lives, to sacrifice, to go, basically to stretch the boundaries of what humankind perceived as a limitation. And so much of where we are today is because of the willingness of people to learn from their failures. And I mean, the aviation industry is the safest way of transport, the safest means of transport there is, because of the lessons that were learned from failure, not because it's inherently that way, but because that every failure led to a deep dive, and people made changes, and they corrected their course, and they improved things so that it was safer for the next time. And so, yeah, we can learn. And I just love that quote you said. I'm printing that out as soon as this call's over. It's fantastic. So thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you, James.
You're welcome. That's good. I like the change of approach idea that, failure doesn't mean you give up. Failure doesn't mean that you turn around and go home. Failure means you just change direction. To me, failure means you just alter your course. So that's a great point. Mr. Wilde, you're up next, then Jane, then Bill McDonald. Stuart.
Great session today, Jamie. Really well done, man. Well, good delivery, everything. Awesome. This brings up a lot of stuff for me in different areas of my life, so I'm just going to kind of roll through a couple of them. First of all, Jackie, you made me cry, and God bless you, and we all love you. No, I'll continue. For me, growing up in a dysfunctional family, addiction, abuse, things like that, that was a real decision for me at a young age to go. And I left, right? And I kind of never looked back. And I wrote off my father maybe when I was 16, and he passed when I was in my early 20s. But before that happened, I made it a point to speak my piece and have those tough conversations. And I'm glad I did, for a whole host of reasons. And without getting too much more into that was the first thing that brought up for me, was the decision to go at a young age, right? I'm grateful that, I'm an only child. I didn't have other siblings to worry about and things like that, but I went. Some of you guys may know, as an outfitter, as a guide, I'm trained and certified in wilderness medicine as a first responder. And one of the things they teach us is stay or go, fast or slow. And maybe this, translates into aviation or other kinds of things. I know we have a couple of first responders on this call as well. And really it's about decision-making, especially critical thinking in times of crisis and things like that, assessing your assets and your liabilities, and what are your resources, and how do you make decisions, right? And then when you do, to have that constant, there's a monitoring, if you would. And I almost relate that, as much as we use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I use ready, fire, aim for me, because it's about making decision and then adjusting the course as we go. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was, as an only child, you talked about competition, right? And so for me as an only child, I developed this penchant for individual sports, swimming, skiing, even tennis to a certain degree. And I really liked what you said about the only person you're competing with is the person that you were yesterday, right? And so I really echo that, man, and hats off to you today. Great job, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks. Good stuff, Stuart. Appreciate the feedback. I'll tell you this, it's funny, I'm watching the hands, and when we talk about failure or fears, you know, you present like this, and your biggest fear of failure is no hands go up. and so I'm grateful to everybody that's raising their hands. I breathed a sigh of relief. I appreciate it. Jane, you're next, then Bill, then Nancy. Jane.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for sharing. And I mean, similar to everybody else, this group is, I feel so much love and challenged that you love me too much to, I mustn't remain where I am, just get out of my comfort zone and just go and achieve. And if any challenges, I can bring it back to my family here to help me if need be. However, I'm speaking from the position of a parent at this time. And what you shared is very, very similar to what the scenario in my family at this point. I have an 18-year-old son, and everything you are saying is just what is the way he's behaving. And also, my husband is somebody that doesn't say much. It does not give much compliment. It doesn't give compliment. And not just to my son, and I'm encouraging him to get out of that, but that has actually affected my son. And what we're experiencing at the moment is kind of rebelliousness in his actions. And exactly what you said, that I care only for myself, not for anybody else. And taking it from a standpoint of a parent, I know that we have our shortcomings as a parent, and everything that we are working for is for our children to be better than ourselves. And my son or my daughters, I think I should afford them to ask before even they receive. But especially my son, because as a child he had some kind of disability which is outgrown now. So it was like I was always watching out for him and encouraging him, and he's found his skills. However, he's going to university this month. But during this COVID period, we found that, and he went to a very, very, very good school, and he scored one of the best marks or whatever. But just during that 7 years of just going to school, coming home, get some work done, supporting in every way that we can. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, you know, you don't give compliments, which I do agree with, do not give. My husband doesn't give compliments. But how do we solve it as a parent in this problem now is what I am trying to the forum to help. I have a son going through that with me, and it's just a nightmare. And I do know that as a parent, in terms of emotional development, probably we have not done our best in that area because we are emotionally challenged ourselves. We're just going through a period of healing as a parent ourselves. I mean, we have all our excuses for whatever we've done, all our reasons, but then we have, as to the best of our ability, made our children a priority. However, the girls kind of, I have an older daughter, and she understands much better, and the younger one as well. But my son is just taking it exactly as the way you have spoken, Jamie. And from a parent, from that point of view, that whatever we've done is to the best of our ability. not because we want to deliberately be like that, if you see what I mean. And even now, if Jesus was to come now, it's like this is our best. The best I know how to do. However, we are learning from this experience to be better. And it's like, okay, it's going to take me some time, but all you've taught me is just to go to school, score grades, and it wasn't even as much as try to show us that, especially my husband, because I was always giving compliments. But it wasn't just raised like that. And even as a wife, we've banged head, and it's like, okay, I'm improving on that, but it's actually emotionally affected this 18-year-old young man.
Good stuff. That's great stuff. I can so understand and feel for you with talking about raising kids. It's, we're always going to be better than the last generation, and we hope to instill in our kids to be better than the generation that we are. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And I think one foot in front of the other with kids.
Yeah.
I mean, you can parent by your gut, or you can parent through a book. Combination, one or the other, whichever's best suits your needs, and I think that's where we go. Thanks. Bill, you're up.
Oh, wow. What a great subject, Jimmy. It certainly opened the floodgates, so you did, mate. Much like I did last week. Great presentation, by the way. Very good. And again, another day, another learning experience. Every day is a school day here. And it's the openness and honesty of the people that we have here that makes it what it is. And that's a great thing to be able to share. James just spoke about the difficulties. Jackie, nightmare. Good to hear Jackie speaking, I have to say, other than pre-call, which we usually get a good bit of jest with her, but, right from the heart. Parents, we're all at the same similar age group. We all had parents. My dad was, I've said before, was born in 1924. He wasn't a young man when I came along. So it was, kids were seen and not heard. Mum didn't, no hugs, no nothing, no well done that, well done this, none of that. Same as you, Jimmy, basically. I think a lot of us can probably relate to that. Parenting itself is never easy. I have two stepsons and a daughter of 24. Boys were easy. The stepdaughter, nightmare, complete nightmare, complete. But that said, I'm in a better place these days. So now I'm helping her to get in that better place. And it's through some of the stuff I'm learning on this, some of the stuff I'm reading. And what I like to do is I pass on the books to her now, and she's getting there. And that's a good thing. I wish she was as wise as her 3-year-old daughter, because that would be so much easier. But she's getting there, and she's stronger. You could go on. You could go on. I mean, it is a case of, for parenting or for having your parents or understanding your parents, because they were from a different era. And it is that old saying about, and I heard this on a podcast this morning, how do you know someone if you don't know yourself? So it's maybe a good place to start, as opposed to critiquing everybody else. Maybe we should critique ourselves first and then look at everyone else to see how we feel they balance up. And one of the best things, and what you were saying earlier about performances and having plans and making sure, you're crossing the road, you need to have that. And it'll relate to some people here. They used to talk about the 5 Ps in military training. Sometimes they added 6 Ps, but basically it stands for proper planning prevents piss poor performance. I think that sort of sums a lot of us up. If we stopped and thought sometimes, then we would be that better way excelled. I don't know what I'll put that in the chat line, but we shall see. And the only other thing I'd like to finish with on a high is that I'm glad that I discover that AVA likes two types of music, country and Western. Thank you.
Awesome stuff, man. Thank you. I appreciate the kudos. It's good to be able to contribute here. It really is. We got Nancy next, then Glenn, followed by Jody and Cyril. Go ahead, Nancy.
Hi, everyone. Jamie, just to give you, thank you so much for your presentation. The highlight for me was your share about your dad. Of course, personal stories are everything that we can relate to, and it incites that emotion. So well done. And also just kudos to Bill and other people. I love the way that you acknowledge every single person who's shared. It's really lovely. I'd like to say a couple of things about, just echo what Bill said. Like, my parents were of an older generation. My mom was born in 1927. She's still here. My dad has been gone over 50 years, and he was born in 1905. My mom, because of the era that she was born in, she grew up on a farm, very, very poor, and ended up growing up in Vancouver, BC later in her life. But she's a lovely and amazing human being, but very risk averse. So this was the individual that I had been mentioning that I was not sharing with her what it is I'm doing with e-commerce. So this is a little bit of a win on that I wanted to share. And it relates to your topic, Jamie. So I was avoiding having a conversation with her because I wanted her approval. And I can feel my voice changing, right? And I know that I'm probably not going to get it. I did it anyways. And so I want to share with you the angle that I came to her for was not, I just had to tuck aside, like, she's probably not going to really go for the idea. But the way that I went about it was inviting her insights and thoughts on products, inviting her into the experience with me. And I got to tell you, it was amazing. And I got to take her through Helium-10 for those people that are listening and don't know what that is. If you're doing Amazon, and it's this beautiful platform that shares with you a whole bunch of information about possible products. And it was really cool to share that with her. So that was huge. And a realization for me is that the feeling of lightness, like Therese had by getting rid of the old stuff from her former marriage, like for me, the not having to withhold anymore is huge, okay? And then the second thing I want to tell you is that I have a 21-year-old son who I adore. He's an only child, and he is in the middle of finishing his AA degree at a community college. And I have my own expectations for him. So now as a parent, I'm experiencing that, right? And it's really hard because I want the best for him. And he's struggling right now, knowing what he's going to do, and is feeling my own pressure. So here I am in the seat to try to be that transition person that Koila was sharing. And then last, I'll just leave you with an experience I had, and I might have shared this before, but it's coming back again. I was over at a party at a friend's house about 5 years ago or 6 years ago when my son was in high school. And this guy had 2 kids that were graduating, and I just asked him, what's your advice about, you know, raising a great teenager? And he just said, love them for who they are, not for who you want them to be. Yeah. And my heart just cracked. So as a parent, it's huge, and it's a practice. It's not anything you can just get over. It's a lifelong practice. Thanks for making a great topic today, Jamie.
You're welcome. Thanks, appreciate it. One point I'd like to, about what you just said about not love them for not who you want them to be, but who they are. I had a conversation with my daughter. We were talking about college, and I just said to her, I said, you know, I think there's a lot of parents, there's a big push to send their kids to college. And I just said to her, I said, you don't have to go. And her jaw dropped to her knees. And I said, you do, you know, what do you want in life is going to be what path you take. If that path is college, great. If that path is, you know, whatever it is. And I think it just, I think because of all the conversations that she and her her friends have is all about parenting, pushing towards college. Seems to be. She was astounded. So yeah, that's good insight. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie. That brings tears to my eyes. Just like letting go of that pressure.
Yeah. I don't want to be that parent. I don't want to be that parent that sits on the bench and screams at their kid because they didn't kick the ball right, or they didn't swing the golf club right, or they didn't bowl the bowling ball right. I don't think any of us want to be. I've caught myself being that and muzzled myself real quick. Went down to the other end of the field, and shut my mouth. So, yeah. Anyway, it's a tough road to walk, line to walk. Glenn, you're up, my friend.
Jamie, thank you. Well done, my friend.
Thank you.
The best kinds of movies, the best kinds of TV shows, music, the best kinds of presentations are those that get people talking and keep them talking. And you've done that. Well done. Congratulations. Expectations. Boy, whose expectations count? And I'll leave that open question for each of us to answer for ourselves. Whose expectations count? You were talking about to go or not to go. I recall, as I look back on my own life, almost all of the greatest regrets I have a couple, not a lot, but almost all of them have to do not with things that I did that didn't work out well, not that didn't have to do with things I did where I failed or something else. Almost all the regrets I have are around things that I didn't even try. So I don't know about you all, but I'm done with not trying things.
Absolutely.
Not going. It's interesting. You definitely, Bill was right, Jamie. You definitely opened up the floodgates here as with regard to conversation, and this is a very tender spot in a lot of parent hearts. Mine as well. I feel almost weird because I had a wonderful childhood family, very close-knit. My parents were happily married for 44 years until the day my dad passed. And so I have that wonderful legacy of love and godliness and support. I had that in my home. Got to the point where when my dad was about to pass from cancer, I was through circumstances, I was actually living with my folks at that time. And so at the time my dad passed, there was nothing left unsaid between us, which is a wonderful resolution and tribute to his life. The big thing for me as a father of two grown daughters has become non-attachment. Not that I don't love my girls, my beautiful daughters. I do. Not that I'm not proud of them. I am enormously proud of them. Again, through a set of circumstances in my own life, in our own lives, my daughters and I don't talk much these days. And that really hurt me for a long time. And I would love to be in regular communication with them. And the reason why I'm okay around that now is because I realized that the goal in raising my daughters was not to get them to talk to me all the time. The goal in raising my daughters was to help them to become independent, successful women. And guess what? They are independent, successful women. So if, as is possible, I never have another conversation with my daughters as long as I live, I'm satisfied, because they are independent, successful women, which is all that I, as a father, could have possibly hoped for. That's where I sit with regard to my children at this time. And I thank you again, Jamie, for opening up and creating a forum here for all of us to express something that's clearly deep inside for all of us. Thanks. Back to you.
You're welcome. And to hear you say that you've accepted that is you are so far above the curve. because I know a lot of parents whose kids don't talk to them, they resent the hell out of them. And it's almost as you were talking, I was thinking about it, and I started to smile. I was like, be careful what you wish for. You raise these independent young women, and they're not talking to you anymore, but that was the goal. So there's nothing to be resentful about. And I kudos to you for taking that path. And I appreciate your sentiments. I do. We have Jody is next. Cyril is next, and that's all the hands that are up for now. And we're almost to the top of the hour. So Jody, please.
Whew. Wow, I know it's late, and I'm going to try to condense, and it's awfully hard to follow these eloquent speakers. And after I saw Glenn, I was after Glenn. I thought, oh, maybe I'll put my hand back down, but I'm back. And you're the first one I've heard talk about a supporting childhood, because I did, and I have had so much guilt last week and this week thinking about that I didn't come from angst. Sorry.
It's
My
okay.
parents were together 67 years, and they always supported everything I did. And there's a different pressure for that. Sorry. You have this pressure to not let them down. Okay, and I'm sorry Jackie left, because my parents never said, I love you. Right? I knew I was loved. They showed it, but they never said it, and that was their generation. I was born in the 50s. That wasn't the generation. And I came home from college one year and said I loved them, and they said it back. And it was like, whoa, what just happened here? And then they said it to my sister and my brother, and now every conversation and every phone call, all right, love you, bye, love you, love you. And we've come full circle, and hopefully people are meaning it, but it wasn't that they didn't love me. We just didn't say that. It was, like money, religion, politics. You just didn't say that outwardly, or public displays of affection. But, okay, now I'm gonna jump to, I was a teacher. My favorite grade was 6th grade. And going along with what Mark, Jamie, everybody said, failure, we change direction. And a good teacher monitors everything and modifies. That's what's in your brain. And to the least common denominator, to the crazy kids off the scale, to everything. That's what you have to do. And part of my teaching was teaching the children how to self-evaluate. And it was groundbreaking, and I did speeches on it and wrote papers on it. You can't expect them to pick their grades. Yeah, I can, because these are the expectations for this project. We laid them out. They know exactly where they are. I don't have to give them a grade on that paper. They sat with me and went through that and went, yeah, I guess, yeah, I didn't do that. You're right. I can't get an A. So they learned, and we morphed through that through the year, that they actually could pick their grade each quarter. Yeah, there were a couple wise asses that, thought they deserved more than they had. Kind of comfort, realized grade. They didn't feel that I was pointing at them. And the other part of that was I had to teach the parents. I was outside of DC. I had parents who were editors at the Washington Post. So how do you edit these kids' stories knowing that their parents, that's their job, their livelihood? So it was stressful, but I had to teach the parents. They can't be what you want them to be, which segues me into the next place is, my kids are in their 30s, and sports and everything was all about, oh, my kid's amazing, my kid is great, everybody gets a trophy. And even if you had a conference with a parent, well, my child would never have done that. And they were so set on praising their kid and putting them on a pedestal and telling them how wonderful they were all the time, that I think some of the kids have lost concept of what really excelling or being is, or maybe participating, because we've reversed from parents always being hard on their kids to parents telling their kids how amazing they are, and then they can't accept disappointment. They don't know how to rise above something that doesn't go their way. And I look at all of these people here and their sad stories of childhood, and look where you are. Like, you are the ones that are the cream of the crop. You are the ones that are just flying out there. And it amazes me that, because I guess from angst is growth. And just like the great poets, if they didn't have angst in their life, They didn't produce amazing, thoughtful poetry. Okay, last point. See, rising, soaring, aviation. I got to get in on the club, boys. I got to get in. So in the early 80s, when Reagan got rid of all our air traffic controllers, here's Jody. I can be an air traffic controller. So I go off, I take the exams. I have the interviews. I'm chosen. You get to come to school and be an air traffic controller. So back in the 80s, there were probably 2 out of the 600 or 700 they were hiring were women.
Wow.
And I'm going to be one because I can be an air traffic controller and I love to travel. And if I break down in 3 years, fine, I did it. I accomplished something. Well, my fiance from college at the time, who was finishing graduate school, said, if you go to Oklahoma City with all these men for 2 months where you don't get any contact with anybody, you are in school. That's it, period, the end. You live, eat, breathe, air traffic control. I won't marry you. Unfortunately, it was 11 years later that I realized I probably should have gone to that school and done that. So that's my only big regret. And I want this chapter here in e-commerce and how we're excelling and what we're going to do with all our millions and help people to be the next thing I don't regret. And that's because of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Just one question. You didn't marry that guy, did you?
I did. 11 years I was married, 2 great kids, but
I was trying to be
it took
funny.
me a long time. Not that great.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I know my only big regret, people say, what do you regret? Not being an air traffic controller. What? Yeah. It was super cool. I thought it would have been great.
Yeah. I do want to add to that with as far as the parents and I love yous, and you know, I'm sure a lot of us have experienced this when you go to hug your in our later ages, when you go to hug your parents, or guys go to hug their dads, you get that, you know, chest out, butt out, chest in, pat on the back. Nobody wants to put their head together. It's kind of like this. You know, I've made it a point in the last 5 years where I actually grab my dad and I pull him into me and I pull his, and I get him in a hug and I kiss his cheek and I say, I love you. And he's finally gotten over that hump where he returns, you know, he feels comfortable in his own skin to be able to return it that way. So I just wanted to add that. There was a couple of people that had their hands up. I know we're about 2 minutes over. Cyril, but I think he left. No, he's still here. You know, you're welcome to jump in if you'd like. No pressure.
Hi, sorry about that. My data's been cutting in and out, so it wasn't me who put my hand down. Okay. I just wanted to add a few things that I thought might be relevant. I wasn't going to speak today, but I think you eloquently came up with such an interesting thing that touches so many lives. As a child, my father, I didn't really particularly feel necessarily that close to him. I kind of suppose in the back of my head I knew I was loved because, you know, he was a tailor and he would work a lot at home. And when I went in to see what he was doing, he would always kind of just let me watch what he was doing. So I felt that was, so I know, to me that felt like love, definitely. But I must admit he was really unable at that time to really overture his love, to really give much outward. But because eventually, basically, my mother and father then ultimately didn't get on, because my mother was very difficult to live with and he didn't handle it well, unsurprisingly, and he didn't do very well. So she ultimately chucked him out. And it's interesting that I found that it really appeared, once eventually after I would go out on the parental visits, which took me a long time to say yes to, it was obvious that he had made the leap, because he was so much more verbally affectionate and would hug. And you're right, with men of that era, particularly from he was from the West Indies, and they have a whole thing about the West Indian thinking on children is, in fact, actually that was part of the problem, actually, because the West Indian thinking on children is if they do wrong, you beat them. And my mother would say, don't beat him, beat me. So so I understand a lot of the problems that that a lot of families have had over that school. But that's just one part. But the other thing I wanted to say is that I've had so much failure. So much failure. It took so long before things would ever go right for me, and it took a long time to find out for some of the reasons for some of that failure. It was very difficult. I've often found it very difficult to get up and keep getting up. In some things I've managed to do that, but still been beaten down by it. Very, very difficult to deal with that. I still have trouble dealing with things that I fail at a lot, but I'm better at dealing with it now, because before, emotionally, it used to really take it out of me in terms of that much failure. But I remember something that taught me quite a lot. Eventually, when I became a dancer, and I had a lot of failure at that too. But later on, when I got into Latin dance, and I found people used to love what I would do, I suppose because I'd had quite a bit of training by then. And I used to have people asking me to teach and so on. And that was just such a pleasure to be asked and to have a way to make a living with that. But I remember when I started teaching, I learned another big lesson, was that I realized that I could not give them what I gave myself. I did not praise enough. I realized almost as soon as I started, I was not giving enough to them to help their process. So I literally worked on being able to praise them in a way that would really help their progress. And in doing so, I know that helped me in terms of internally being able to praise myself, which I think is so good to do. I learned a lesson at university where I realized about the small child, another area where I realized about the small child inside, in the unconscious mind. And I realized when I had just finished some large project, and if I had to do another one straight away, and I didn't even acknowledge the fact that I had just put in this massive piece of work, I couldn't think. My brain would not function. I could not even hardly start the next one, even though it was absolutely necessary that I did. And it was only when I allowed myself to go and take some sort of praise by going to see a friend, having a drink with a friend, going out for a drink, even if I could only do it myself, or to just go and see a friend. It made all the difference. My psyche would then start to function again. I think that the process of internally praising oneself is just as important as the external one. And you find the people who can't do it outwardly, it's because they can't do it inwardly. That's my thought anyway. So my thought on it is that it's about personal development. And if it's an area that if somebody hasn't dealt with internally, then one has to try and lead them to it if they cannot see it as a place they need to go. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Cyril. That was great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's amazing. We all have these. It's funny that we all have these stories, and I'm glad we could all. It just kind of reminds me of one big grand therapy session, to be honest with you. Jane and Neil are up, and then Jody's got her hand up one more time, and then I think we're going to wrap it up. We're 9 minutes over. Jane and Neil.
Hi, Jamie. Hi. We've just come in at the end of this because actually my kids were over here helping us move some stuff, which is exactly what you want from your kids, to just turn up and help. But I've got two little stories, and I promise they'll be very quick and chop, Evelyn. So one very similar to you, Jody. My mum and dad have always been there supporting me throughout my life in whatever I did. And however, it took him a week before he died to actually tell me that he loved me. And that I knew, obviously, that they both did, but and all I could say to him then, because it was as much as he could do to actually tell me that, was, I know that already, Dad, you haven't got to worry about anything. And literally within a week later he passed away. But the other story, and this is going out to Glen really, because certainly my daughter, she has been, she's now 29. She's certainly been a bit of a tearaway throughout her life. And as a dad, I got a call from her one day, and she was on the end of the phone. She said, Dad, I've got some information for you. And I'm thinking straight away, oh my God, she's gone and got herself pregnant. And okay, how are we going to deal with this? But no, she said, no, Dad, I've joined the ambulance service. And I think we all know that I'm a paramedic, and this year she's passed her exam and she's now qualified as a paramedic. And some of the proudest moments I've had with her is when we've done jobs together and we've actually managed to save people's lives together. How much more could a dad want than being with their daughter on an ambulance, saving somebody's life? Absolutely brilliant. So they will come back to you, Glen, I promise. It will just be when you probably least expect it.
Exactly. Thanks, Neil.
That's all I've got to say.
That's a great story. I mean, we all.
I'm saving it for her wedding as well. I'm definitely going to bring that one up at her wedding. That I thought she was ringing me to tell me that she was pregnant. No, she joined the ambulance service.
That'll be a great story, a great father speech at a wedding. All right, we're 12 minutes over. Let's go, Jody, and then I think we'll wrap it up. I'll hand it back over to our fearless leader and Jody.
10 seconds, very light topic. I know several of you got to get together yesterday for happy hour. Yes, it was Neil, Jane, and I know Star was there, and we've got some others online, don't we, that were there. But I have a question. Does Cyril move his mouth when he talks in real life? We only see his picture here. I just want to know if it really works. Sorry,
he's actually taller in the real life as well.
There he goes. There he is.
There he is.
My apologies.
I just had to ask. Burning
my
desires.
apologies.
Cyril came all the way from
London.
London.
I do. Yes. Sorry.
That's great. Thanks, Cyril. That's funny. That's hilarious. Back to you, my friend. And everybody today, say I love you to at least one person.
Oh, what a session. Jaime Young, ladies and gentlemen. Jaime Young. Thank you, sir. We're going to get back here tonight with colostomy bags. Bring your colostomy bag. Thank you all who stuck around. Of course, if you're seeing this on recording, you need to be in this group. So go ahead and grab yourself a membership. We'll see you back here in a few hours. In the meantime, let's get busy. We got work to do. Let's get it done. Thanks again.
We'll see you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Love you.
Great job, Jamie. Bye.
Bye.